Tarnished, I want to raise with you today the provision of the Shannon LNG terminal on the Ballylongford land bank on the Shannon estuary. A planning application is being processed at the present time by Bord Penala. We need this terminal to have energy security into the future. We are leaving ourselves very exposed given the current situation in Ukraine, importing coal from Russia, and Europe importing 30% of its gas from Russia. We see now what this is doing to our fertiliser costs. Wind turbines are fine, but no good when the wind doesn't blow. Like last summer, which was almost totally windless. Every country in Europe, all those touching the sea, have LNG terminals. Countries like Portugal, Spain, Holland, and even Malta has an LNG terminal. The Corrib gas field doesn't have that much more left. Money Point gladly is going full belt. But the coal to keep those fires burning is coming from Russia. Where were they with that source now, given the conflict between Europe and Russia? And anyway, gas is cleaner than coal. We've 8 gas burning stations in the country when they're working, but we need gas to keep them going, so we will need gas for at least 30 or 40 more years. We need to have our own terminals so that we have the option of buying gas from other countries like the US, who would be inclined to sell it to us. So now we have the totally reckless act by our Minister for the Environment, and I see he's after disappearing, Eamon Ryan, who's made a submission on Bord Penala against the Shannon LNG application. I believe that this is a misuse and abuse of his powers, as he has demeaned the position of Minister for the Environment. He is trying to sabotage one of our options of energy security. I believe that this is part of the job he's supposed to be doing as Minister for the Environment, ensure that we don't run out of electricity. I believe that his objection is ethically and morally wrong and in total contradiction of his portfolio. I'm calling for an investigation into what he has done. Patrick O'Donovan said on Kerry Radio that he was in favour of Shannon LNG. Yet you, Tarnished, have said you won't support it, but that you won't block it either. Our Taoiseach Micheál Martin has gone back on his word to the people of North Kerry when he promised that he would support Shannon LNG while canvassing with Norma Foley in the last general election. He has gone with the wind. He believes in wind energy only now. And as he have closed down Bord na Móna, our own independent energy source, and won't support Shannon LNG, are the intent on leading us into the dark. It's not acceptable to be exposing the country to the lights going off. We have very little options, and we do need to get gas from other sources like the US.
Thanks, Deputy. The lights aren't going to go off, and the Minister for the Environment, Mr. Ryan, has signed off on the construction and bringing into commission of 9 new gas plants in Ireland over the next number of years, because we acknowledge that natural gas is a transition fuel, that we're going to need natural gas over the course of the next 20 or 30 years while we decarbonise our country and our economy. But I think if the crisis and the war in Ukraine does anything, it exposes once again our vulnerability to fossil fuel dependence. Even if there was no climate crisis, we can see more so than ever how vulnerable we are, how dependent we are on oil and gas and coal that doesn't come from here, doesn't even come from Western Europe, comes from places like Russia, comes from the Middle East and the Gulf region, comes from South America. And it's not right that we as a country should be so dependent on fossil fuels. Even if it wasn't for the climate crisis, for economic reasons and security reasons, we need to wean ourselves off our dependence on fossil fuels. There is a planning application, as you say, for an LNG terminal in Tarbert in North Kerry. I'm familiar with that project. It's currently at planning permission stage. It's not supported by government, but if it gets planning permission and if the company that has applied for planning permission is able to fund it, well then they're in a position to build it. But I actually don't think that's the right investment for that site. This is an area that is close to the mouth of the Shannon estuary, is very close to our offshore wind resources in the west of Ireland, is very close to the grid, which is plugged into Money Point and Tarbert. And what I would like to see happen there over the course of the next 10 years is a development of offshore wind. You bring the wind ashore. When the electricity is needed, you plug it into the grid, you use it for electricity to power our homes and factories and farms and businesses. When it's not needed, you turn it into hydrogen. And you can also turn it into fertilizer as well. And this is the future. It's using that offshore wind resource for electricity, for hydrogen as a replacement to natural gas, and also for green and sustainable fertilizers. That is the future. And those kind of investments that are happening potentially in North Kerry shouldn't be seen as 5 or 10-year investments. They should be seen as a 30-year investment. And the right investment there, in my view, isn't LNG, it's LHG. It's liquid hydrogen gas. And that's what we need in that site, in my view.
Deputy Healy-Rae.
All the ideals are fine, and it's like leave hearts till you get grass. And when you talk about 10 years down the road, what are we going to do in the meantime? And look, I'm in favour of wind turbines, basically in the right place, not near houses. But like everything, there's objections to these, and I support the people that have objections to wind turbines near their houses. But the wind doesn't blow all the time, and we can't store the energy that's created by the wind. And it's very clear to everyone that since Bournemouth was closed down that the price of electricity has gone mad. We can't depend on wind energy for a constant supply of electricity. We can't depend on Russia for coal or gas. And now the government doesn't want gas to come in from America or other places. What do you want to do? Are you setting us up to leave us without any electricity? Honestly, Taoiseach, when he closed down Bournemouth, he didn't provide us with any other option.
Thank you, Deputy.
Only importing gas and coal from Russia. That's what we're doing.
Thank you. Taoiseach, please.
Thanks, Deputy. Thankfully, we don't import very much gas at all from Russia. Roughly half of our gas supplies come from our own supplies north of Mayo, and the other half comes from the UK, and that mainly comes from Qatar and the North Sea. So thankfully, we're not particularly dependent on Russian gas in this country, but obviously if the gas were to stop flowing into Eastern Europe, that will have an effect on the price, and that is very likely in the period ahead. But just in relation to Tarbert, in relation to that site in North Kerry, I know it well. I remember going back 10, 15 years ago when Hess were the developers and meeting with them at the time. Whatever happens in Tarbert, it's going to be a 10 or 20 year thing. It takes time to build a terminal or build a facility such as that. And I honestly don't believe that a natural gas terminal is the right solution for that site. That site should be used for liquid hydrogen gas. And what you said is absolutely true, Deputy. The problem with wind power is it's not dispatchable. The wind blows when the wind blows, and that mightn't be the time that you need the energy. And that's the problem with wind. You can't store it, it's not dispatchable. The good thing is there's a solution. Because of technological developments, we can now store wind power, and you can store it either in the form of a battery, and that's what some of those plants in the Midlands are going to be transformed into that you mentioned, moving away from peat to battery power. And the solution to the problems of wind, the fact it can't be stored, the fact it can't be dispatched, is hydrogen. So when the wind is blowing, when we don't have a demand for energy at the time, we can turn that wind energy into hydrogen, into a fuel, a gas that you can use in the way we use natural gas now. And that's actually the investment that should be happening on that site. That's the future thinking. That's where the jobs are going to be. That's where the economic development is going to be. And that's the kind of project that I want to support in that site.